Every morning I wake up and ask myself, what does it mean to be an artist? The artist is someone who engages with the aesthetic. What is beautiful? What is appealing to the eye? In other words, what will cause the viewer to look at my work? But the idea of beauty changes. It's always in a state of flux, and because of this, the aesthetic comes from somewhere. There are some schools of thought that cling to this notion of unchanging aspects of beauty, purely formless interpretations of art that only presuppose that we are all born with this innate, natural sense of aesthetics, but that beauty is universal. This is illusion. The aesthetic experience arises only through engaging with a system of symbols, and symbols are not natural. Symbols can exist only because we have agreed upon a certain understanding in a certain culture. And to complicate things further, these understandings are arrived through our cultural paradigms. They are not neutral. These paradigms, ideologies, discourses, whatever you may call them, are expressions of the current state of power relations. These symbols are then gelled manifestations of interactions between groups of people. They are political. Art, being another system of symbols, is then engaged with the power dynamics that permeate and create our culture. Thus, what I do as an artist can be best explained by Michel Foucault when he states that the real political task in a society such as ours is to criticize the workings of institutions that appear to be both neutral and independent, to criticize and attack them in such a manner that the political violence that has always exercised itself obscurely through them will be unmasked, so that one may fight against them. It became essential to me to find some power relation that was egregiously evident, and seemed the most natural. This is when I became interested in the gender binary. This is when I began to transition from just a producer of objects to an art maker. By reversing, exposing, and playing with the absurdity that is the male-female dichotomy, I'm conversing with the audience about what, if any part of this power structure is natural, and, in choosing a power structure that is the most seemingly rooted in nature, the audience and I can engage in examining other structures. The transitory phase began in late 2009. Before this point, I was drawing things or making things, but they were just objects. There was no real thought process behind them, or at the very least, not a very complex one. I was concerned with symbols of masculinity and femininity on a subconscious level, unknowingly juxtaposing the hard and the soft, the rectilinear and the sinuous. The phallic and the vaginal became interesting to me. I became obsessed with using old symbols like the Venus of Willendorf and ancient phallic sculptures. Then, something happened when I decided to include elements of my personal narrative into my artwork. I began reappropriating elements of the Catholic tradition. Not being religious myself, but being subjected to Catholic school for most of my life, I decided to undermine the oppressive dogmas of gender restriction by using the ritual that is central to most Christianity, the Eucharist. Transubstantiation was an installation that originally happened in 2010, where the audience was allowed to ingest gilded peanuts and drink honeyed milk. It was pretty simple. The goal was to use these seemingly gendered symbols and highlight their symbolism, to revel in the layers of meaning packed in these symbols. Then, the goal was to have the symbols be explicitly broken down to their empirical constituents through the process of digestion. During the reinstallation, I decided to become a part of the artwork, to activate the space with my body. Part of this was brought about the fact that the audience had not engaged with the piece in the original installation. At the same time, I had become interested in the works of performance artists Marina Abramović and Chris Burden. The moment I consumed the peanuts and the milk, I learned the power of using my physical body as a medium. I'd always been interested in the concrete nature of the body, not only the physical restrictions of the body, but the way in which the body is a vehicle between the internal and external world. It is at the same time a wall and a window. All the while, the body is a site of structural restrictions. It is from it that the gender binary is created. It became the perfect medium to exploit. Sensuous body functions became an interest to me. Ingesting, one of the most primal and most satisfying activities. The mouth, a place of transformation. The mouth, an organ that can provide both sensuous and sexual pleasure. The mouth, a site of overlapping functions, became a place for my investigations in the gender binary. Looking back, the idea of using the mouth as an important aspect of my work is evident in the transubstantiation installations, but it was not until I began working with honey and sugar that it became strikingly clear to me. In my first explicit video piece entitled Baptism, I decided to employ the physical dripping of sugar for its erotic effects. To me, this is not separated from the erotic nature of consuming, but rather working in tandem with it. As the sugar dripped over my head, it covered me. In effect, I was covered by that which I found pleasure in. It covered me to the point that it was difficult for me to breathe. I had to use my mouth to breathe. Lately, I've become interested in the way that structures affect our perceptions of not only others, but also of our own identities. I explored this idea in my video installation entitled. For this installation, I chose to exploit the honeycomb structure that exists in nature. I decided to project a video, an image in a constant state of flux, onto a wall that had honeycombs drawn both on the surface and in three-dimensional space. The goal was to engage with the audience in creating a state of looking at the whole image while viewing the vignettes created by the honeycombs, all by being fully aware of the fact that they were seeing a video. A video that is referencing an event that was as staged as it was actually happening in an unidentifiable place. This foray into video work is rooted in the idea of flux. You see, nothing at all is permanent. Everything is always changing. Ephemerality is what the world seems to be made up of at its most fundamental level. Or maybe this is just an illusion, but nevertheless, it is what we perceive. Not only is it what we perceive, but it is also the state of structures. So, because I am making art in an ephemeral world with impermanent structures, I only create art that revels in this, art that exploits this, and enjoys this. When I try to see the trajectory of my work, I'm gaining an appreciation for ambiguity. That is, I'm gaining appreciation for the fact that a dialogue with the audience includes allowing your art to be viewed in ways that you would not have imagined. It is balancing explicitness and ambiguity that make my work interesting. It is this balance that I wish to become better at.